Salmon and Tarragon Pie. Now, I owe a debt of gratitude to my friend Emma. Emma is a rather amazing person and cook, and she lives the sustainable life out there in Nova Scotia in Canada. And I saw on one of her posts this fabulous pastry, and I decided that I had to have that recipe, and so I nagged her until she gave it me. Emma's blog is called A Flavour of Life the Sustainable Way. So have a look at her blog. If you stay there, leave a comment, see what you like. And I tell you what, she's doing some really, really amazing stuff out there in beautiful Nova Scotia. Alright, for this one, for my salmon pie filling, you'll need some salmon. Now, you don't need it looking too fancy or anything, and I picked these up for a really good price. There's 500 grams of farmed salmon fillets here, which I will take off the skin and chop up into little pieces. For this dish I don't need the skin, it's rather unsightly in the pies, although it is quite healthy. So you can make that as a treat for your cat or your dog. I'm sure they'll appreciate it, and it'll give them a nice shiny coat. You'll also need some tarragon. You can use fresh or dried. If you use dried, use quite considerably less than I'll be using here. You'll need some plain flour. I know Emma uses unbleached flour, but I couldn't find any today, so I've got this ordinary plain flour, which is plain all-purpose flour. I've got some Jersey single cream, because what's life without a bit of cream to lux it up. I've got some shallots. Shallots are not quite as pungent as onions, and so they're kind of light and don't detract from the delicate flavour of your fish. Alright, so I'll only be using a couple of those. I've got some lemon, and that's an unwaxed lemon. I only buy unwaxed lemons. Unwaxed lemon, which I'm going to just use as a garnish. And you'll need some kind of fish stock. Right, there's the ubiquitous Knorr fish stock cubes. You can get, I believe you can get the gel pot fish stock. But the one I'm going to use is this rather lovely little shrimp flavoured stock cube, which I think will go rather well with salmon. I picked this up in a local Asian grocer's store, and it's really, really good. If a tiny bit salty, so I will taste before I go with that one. So I'm going to use that. And the other thing you'll need is a nice, I would say a nice flinty wine, something that's a little dry. I would love to have used Chablis, but the prices were silly. So I've got this lovely little Italian Pinot Grigio, and Italian Pinot Grigios are really good with fish, and so that's just to, I don't drink alcohol myself, but that's just to be cooking with the sauce. Alright, and you'll need a pastry brush, and you'll need just some milk for brushing over the pies. So let's get started. Alright, get yourself a suitable mixing bowl, and into that you want to sieve 400 grams of plain flour, and we sieve it to get a bit more air in it. And it's a nice, it's not a terribly important step, but it, you know, if you can, do it. And into that, I'm going into my freezer to get out the butter, which I'm going to have to grate into there. So I'll be back in a second. So I'll give that a shake. And I had this in the freezer. I've got some Welsh salted butter here, and it's 200 grams, so it's half the amount that you have in flour. And I'm one of those unfortunate people that's not a good baker because I have rather hot hands. So I'm going to grate this directly into the bowl. This is what I'm told. This is Emma's recipe, so I'm going along with it. So that gets grated directly into the bowl. Oh, it looks like cheese, look. Awesome. And I'll grate all that into the bowl and then I'll get back to you. So that's the whole 200 grams grated into the bowl. I must point out that I didn't freeze the butter, that I merely put it in the freezer just to firm it up, because I know how hot my hands are. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get in there and then mix that carefully. This is the recipe. The grated butter mix carefully into the flour, or vice versa, making sure that each piece of butter gets coated in flour. You're not working it too much, you're just gently working it so that each piece of butter gets totally coated. Now, it's at this stage, we don't want to overwork this, it's very important because this is an extremely short pastry. It's at this stage I'm going to start adding a little bit of water. Now, there is no set amount of water, you've just got to add the water and see where you are each time. Alright, if I nail this, boys and girls, no one will be more surprised than me. And it's only down to Emma's fabulous instructions. Right, let's get some water in the middle there, and then I'll start to incorporate that. And we just want to get it up to the point where it's a workable dough. But you want to leave those pieces of butter intact. You don't want to incorporate them too much in there. Alright, I think this is going to need a bit more water. It's better to add too little and then need to add a bit more than to add too much. So just keep it going until you've got it to a kind of a workable dough. I think just a little splash more down here. That might have been too much. There you go. Oh no, that's about right. I'm getting there. I've got a friend in Trinidad, some of you will know him, the famous Batman from the Taste of Trini channel, and he's a bit like me. I don't think we like working with flour, because whenever he makes this fabulous, loads of fabulous things, but when I was there he cooked this fabulous curry crab with dumplings, and my God, was it good. Taste of Trini's mum made all the dough for his dumplings, but he was good shaping it, you know, and getting it into the pot. But like me, I don't think he's particularly adept at handling flour. So I think I've got that to a decent state now. So you can still see the whole butter in it, and I think I've nailed it so far. I can imagine Emma out there in Nova Scotia now shaking her head and going, "You didn't get that right." So I'm not going to work it too much. I want to see that butter in there. Right. I don't know whether she covers it and leaves it, but it wasn't in the recipe. So I think what I'll do is I'll flour the surface board a bit here. And, oh, got that bit wet. Yeah, I know, I'm like an ocean-going tadpole because I'm totally out of my comfort zone. 1 second, I've just got to get this out of the way. There we go. And I'm going to sprinkle that with a bit of flour and work it. Now, because I'm going to turn this into two pasties, two foldovers, and to make a kind of salmon, tarragon salmon snack pie. So what Emma advocated is, if you're going to work it like that, you need to cut it before you start to work it. So there you go. So that gives me effectively two fold over pies, and I'm going to roll those out separately. So, and you can see the butter is still there. So I'm going to clean my messy hands up and then get my rolling pin out and see what we can do with this. I knew I had a rolling pin in the house somewhere. Finally found it. So I'm going to sprinkle that with a bit more flour, and I'm going to sprinkle my rolling pin with a bit more flour, and then I'm going to start rolling that out. You'll notice there, you can see the streaks of butter in it right now, can't you? There you go, look. And I'm going to roll it out. No idea how many pies this is going to make, but it looks like a lot. Alright. I suppose I should be doing this on a marble baking thing. Oh God, making right pig's ear of it. Okay, be careful with that butter, dear hearts, because that's not easy. So I think that's kind of where I want it to be, more or less anyway. Roll it fairly thin, but not too thin, because this is going to puff right up, and if it looks anything like Emma's, it's going to look awesome. So here we go. Right, I'm going to put that to one side now. This is the way my sister does it. She lifts it like that. My sister's like the guru with pastry. And I'll transfer that over here. Now I can make a start on the other one. They say that cookery is an art and bakery is a science. Maybe that's why I find baking so difficult. Because it's not the same as cookery. Cookery, you can get it wrong and still get away with it. Whereas with bakery, it's much less forgiving, and generally if you find a good recipe for something in bakery, you tend to stick to it. And all those fantastic artisan bread makers you see at the moment out there in the world, trust me, they are making a lot of mistakes before they get to their finished product. So it's going to take a lot of experience and a lot of experimentation to get where they get. And some of them are making amazing stuff. It really is impressive. Right, I think that's my second one pretty much done. It's rolled out fairly thin. Give it one more bash. Dust it with a bit more. And then let's do the transference thing again. The transfer thing. Alright, good. Now I can get on and make the filling. Alright, I've cleared the decks, I've mixed up my stock. I didn't want an awful lot, and I've separated off a couple of sprigs of tarragon. Alright, if you're using dried tarragon, you want about a level teaspoon of it. I've got some butter for frying, and I'm just chopping up my shallots. I really love working with these shallots, they're so easy to work with. I'll show you. I don't want it chopped up too fine because this is a pie filling, but you can just top, tail, go down the middle of these, and they just peel off so lovely. These, I really do like working with them. It's a bit fiddly down that bottom bit, but there you go. And look how nice it all just comes away. So I've got 3 shallots. These banana shallots, I think we call them. A Shallots shallots, I think is their fancy name. But they do offer a kind of a milder. You still get that nice oniony sweetness and a nice depth of flavour from them, but without the harshness, and I don't want anything overpowering my lovely salmon there. So let's get them chopped up. Ocean going tadpole, that was one of my sayings in the army, you know. You might not believe this, but one time I was a drill sergeant in the army. It was one of the jobs I did in the army, and I think what a lot of recruits and a lot of civilians don't understand is all that shouting and stuff is mainly just theatre, and it's there for a reason. Alright, so that's that chopped up. I've got a little clove of garlic as well. There we go. They used to call me Sergeant Exocet. That's because they could see me coming, but they couldn't do anything about it. I don't think it was that bad. There we go. Right. Just going to chop the garlic up into little slivers. Nice. Alright, and I want a good knob of butter about that size, so we'll put that to one side and wrap the rest of it away. And the next thing I need to do is cut up my salmon. Probably a little bit more butter than that actually. Now let's use all of it. No, not all of it, I don't like that bit there. There we go. Yeah, I think that should be about right. Okay, I'll move all that to one side for now. Right, these are really good, they're really easy to work with, and what I do is I just go down there and run it flat along there, and it's really that easy to take that off the skin. So you just literally run your sharp blade. It doesn't work with a blunt blade, boys and girls. You've got to keep your knife sharp. A knife that ain't sharp is just a piece of metal cluttering up your kitchen. There we go, and along that way, and along that way. That goes in there. And I'll cut those up into chunks about this big because I want it to be fairly substantial in the pie as a pie filling. And I'll just finish this lot off and the other pack, and I'll get back to you. Alright, that's my salmon all cut up and ready to go. My butter's ready to go. I'm just going to strip these tarragon down and then chop that up so it's good in my sauce. Looking at that, I'm beginning to think that 2 sprigs is a little bit too much for that amount. You want about that amount of tarragon, boys and girls. Alright, I would say that's a loose tablespoonful of tarragon. So I'm going to put half a sprig back. Right. Okay, I'm bringing my saucepan up to the heat, and the first thing we've got to do is make ourselves a nice roux sauce. Alright, to make a nice roux sauce we need to melt some butter in a pan. I'm going to quickly chop up my tarragon. Lovely herb with fish is tarragon, really do like it. But it is fairly strong flavoured, so just taste it before you go to know how strong it is, because at different times of the season it will be a little more pungent, a little stronger than you might think. So it is a fairly pungent herb. You can also do this with parsley, but I don't think it works quite as well as tarragon. So let's get that melted up, and into that butter I'm going to put just a couple of spoonfuls of flour. So it's a couple of dessert spoonfuls of flour, and you melt that into the butter and give that a good old stir. Alright, and that's over a fairly high heat, a medium to high heat, and then you get that cooking down a little bit, but you don't want it to brown. Alright, you see where we're going with that? Alright, it's at this stage I'm just going to add my stock, and then you keep stirring. This is just a very simple roux sauce. Now, I didn't fry the onion first, I didn't fry the shallots first, and there's a reason for that, and that is because I don't want it to overpower anything. So the next thing I want to do is add a glug of wine. What's that? And then you keep mixing. You want to get this a bit more loose, because that's your pie filling. That's starting to smell really good. Right, into that goes your tarragon and your shallots and your garlic, all in at this stage. Trust me on this. I know it's very French to fry your shallots first, but I don't want them browning. I don't want any brown getting in that. And then now I'm going to add a little bit more vino. So if you see all together, I've added about half of that small bottle of vino. So I've added about 100 ml. There you go. So there's a nice thick roux sauce. And what we do now is add a little water to that to thin it out a little bit. Okay. Need to add a bit of water, and I'll show you the consistency we're after. You've got to keep moving this, otherwise it will form massive lumps, and you don't want the lumps. You want it to be a smooth sauce with your nice shallots. And don't forget you've got the salty stock in there, so that's all developing its flavours. Alright, right, do you see that? That's like kind of a porridgey consistency now. Alright, and what will happen with that is when you cook it, it will get slightly thicker, so you have to bear that in mind. I'm turning the heat right down on that now. I'll pull it off the heat for a sec. It's getting a bit too much. When you cook this down and when you bake it in a pie, that will become even thicker. So what we're going to do now is thin it out a little bit more. I'll mix that in, and then I'll go for a taster, see where we are. Right. And that's another reason why I didn't cook the shallots. I didn't want them browning, and B, they'll continue cooking in the pie. That is absolutely wonderful. That is so, so good. Right, it's a little salty, but then that's my stock cube. So this is why it's very important to taste and know the strength of your stock cube. But by the time my salmon has gone into that, it will be rather good. So there you go, that's nice and thick. Nice thick consistency is what you're after. Alright, I've taken that off the heat, and to help it cool, I'm just going to put in a nice splash, about a tablespoon of cream. That's Jersey pouring cream I'm using there, but single cream is fine. Cream from Jersey cows is just so amazing. It's very famous and popular in Britain. And I think I'm just going to add a little splashette more of wine in that. Alright. And that will form our pie filling. You'll notice I haven't put the salmon in it yet, because I want that to cool, because I don't want the salmon to cook in this sauce right now. The salmon will cook inside the pie. Right, now we've got to crank our oven up to 350 degrees Celsius. Sorry, 350 degrees Fahrenheit in the old money, and which is 180 degrees Celsius. So we crank that up and get that up to heat for about 10 minutes while we're allowing the tarragon sauce to cool off. Just as a little aside, while I'm having a quick tidy up here, I tried to get a wild salmon for this, and I just can't get it at the moment. But if you do, and I would think Emma would probably have access to wild salmon up where she is in Nova Scotia at certain times of year, use it. Please use it, because it is better than this. Farm salmon is okay, but wild salmon is really good. I asked the fishmonger if he had any wild salmon. He said yeah, it is wild. It took me about 4 hours to get it chopped up and in the box. Right, so now we're just waiting for the oven to heat up, and I'll get back to you. Okay, I made a total pig's ear of getting that into the pan. So what I've done is I've put the second one into my baking pan, and I'm just going to patch up that little hole there. Because I think it will hold its integrity a much better once it's in the pan and once it's baked. So I'm going to fill that one up. That's probably a bit too much. And then we'll get that over the top. Same drill as before, only this time with a little bit more applied intelligence. Alright, and then I fold that over pretty much as it did before, a bit like a Cornish pasty. And then tuck that in like that. Very nice. And you see there's a bit of a pig's ear of this one, or the other one, because I kind of messed it up getting it into the pan, but as you can see with this technique, the pastry is still going to be awesome on that. We might get a bit of spill out from there. Anyway, we should see in the finished product. The last thing I want to do is brush this with a bit of milk. I got this new pastry brush today, saw it in the supermarket, I rather like that. So brush that over with milk. I'm presuming this is what you do with them, this type of pastry. And so it doesn't get streaky, I want it to go all over the surface. Don't like those streaks. And You do remember that we've got raw salmon in those pies, but in the time it takes to cook the pies, trust me, that salmon will be perfect. I'm going to now put that in the oven. I'm going to try that for about 30 minutes before I look at it at 180 degrees, and then I'm going to, if necessary, just leave it in a little bit longer, but I want that crust to come up nice and golden. Alright, it's time for the reveal. Oh my. There we go. As I predicted, there's an awful lot of butter that's come out of the pastry and into the bottom of the baking pan, so I'll need to drain that off. And let me just, you can hear that that is actually baked nicely. The pastry looks awesome. I'm going to decant those onto a plate now, and we'll see them as a finished dish. Right, there you are. That was a lot easier to get out of the pan than I anticipated. It lifted out with a fish slice under it really easily. They say the opera isn't over until the fat lady sings. Then the reveal isn't over until the fat bloke takes a bite, so why don't we just do that? I'm just going to go in on this corner to start with, because I have a feeling that this pie, I will enjoy this more when it's cold, but you deserve, my dear viewers, to see what it's turned out like. Oh, that pastry is really nice. It's kind of really nice and solid on the bottom. Oh, I like this. Yeah. Oh yeah, let's have a look. Let's get you a nice view of it. And there you go. And let's try that. Lovely. That's a big bite. Oh, that's so good. Emma, you've got the job as my pastry guru. I can't describe that pastry because there's nothing I've eaten in my life that compares to it. It really is lovely. It's got elements of puff pastry to it, but it's crumbly and This is supposed to be a little reveal. I can't stop eating it. As it is in pasty form, it makes a decent cold snack, and decent picnic pie. In hot form, I would definitely do it as a pot pie with a lid. But this is not shabby at all, I can tell you, and with a little squeeze of lemon, that's going to be great. I'm going to eat the rest of this pie when it's cooled down, and I think it's got those kind of robust flavours which will lend themselves very nicely to a cold pie or a picnic pie. So it's delicious hot or cold, and there you have it, my Emma's pastry challenge, salmon and tarragon pie. Thanks for watching. And just before I go, a quick shout out to Michael Noon, because I said I'd give him a shout out. Alright mate, cheers mate.
If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to follow my channel, please subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon to receive notification of all my upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.